Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, good people, I am in airplane mode. And now a man who's leaving on that midnight train to Georgia, leaving on the midnight train. Except he's going to Indiana, a man who needs no introduction.
Yeah, on a plane. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you may be. I hope you're all doing well. Pocket Locker, good afternoon to you.
Yes, good afternoon to you as well. I'm all right. I'm hanging in there. I'm kind of interested in this clip we have today because they're talking about why men don't go to church, and it's a classic episode of Hot Program in the sense that I haven't seen it at all, so I have no idea what they're going to say.
I apologize for interrupting you. Al Tucker replied, "It's boring and interferes with fishing, shade tree mechanics, drinking team, weightlifting, and reality." Thank you for watching Hot Program today. We do appreciate you tuning in and your loyalty. Well put, Al. Well put.
Oh, I forgot. He's answering the question of the day. It took my brain a second to figure out what's going. It's boring and interferes with fishing. Shade tree mechanics. Yep. Drinking team, weightlifting, and reality. Yeah.
I have literally done all of those things, but the exercise part instead of going to church.
Yeah. If you get that Sunday morning off, that the most people are sleeping in. Al Trucker, you said something that I think is incredibly overlooked, not just in terms of church, but in terms of religion overall. It is so boring. Oh my goodness, it's so boring, and it's almost like for some reason, as people have gotten older, they've lost sight of how boring church was. I could tell you. Listen, let me put it to you this way, my one black friend.
Yes, please.
I don't sit in pews. I don't even sit in pews. I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. I don't even sit in pews. Like, the idea, what I'm getting at, y'all, is as the drummer, being part of the worship team, if you need me playing, I'm your man. If you don't need me to play, don't expect me to be here. I'm not. No, I'm not getting up early in the morning and just gonna chill here for a couple of, I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm just saying that's my mentality. Like, for real, something has to be going on. I have to feel like, oh, I have to check on the system. I'm worried. I got to show my support for this thing. It's somebody's birthday. We're doing baptism. Like, it has to be a special occasion. It has to be, because it's just, why? It's, people overlook it. It's so boring. And I got to be honest with y'all. Like, I think that's how young people get involved in the church. Right? Like, it's just so boring. You don't want to, you're just like sitting next to your mom week after week, just like sitting there. And then you're like, can I get in the choir? Can I join the dance team? Y'all need sound people. Can I help with the lights? Like, can I do something? Because this is just incredibly boring. And then for some reason, as people get older, I don't know what happens, but it's like people have forgotten how boring church was and how much you hated it as a child. I'm talking as a believing child. As a believing child, church was just the and look, and I'm gonna tell y'all, like, I'll tell y'all, this is how you know Christians don't really want to be in heaven. You know they don't really want to be in heaven because they compete over who's in church for the least amount of time. Right? When you at the water cooler on Monday talking about the game, you're like, oh yeah, well, you know what, the game was great, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I missed the first half because, you know, church didn't let out till like 12:30, and by the time we got some lunch and got home, and the other person be like, nah, man, I saw the whole thing because, my church started at 10, but we out of there by 11. So I had already went to lunch, took me a little nap. And, and when the game came on, I was ready to go. In other words, the person who went to church for an hour wins. The loser is the person who was in church all afternoon. And I can tell you this too, because I lived the difference. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I went to Catholic school, so we had school mass. I know Catholic mass is 45 minutes to an hour because I've done countless Catholic masses, right? I also went to a non-denominational church every Sunday with my mom. That church was like a solid 90 minutes to 2 hour experience. Same thing with my dad's AME. AME stands for African Methodist Episcopal. It's like Black people made their own version of Methodist. They're right in that same range, right? My grandparents' church, though, hardcore Pentecostal. You expected to be there at 9 for Bible study, Sunday school. Sunday morning service starts around 10. You might not get out of there till 12:30, 1 o'clock. No exaggeration. And then a lot of times actually, they have fellowship services, which means there's going to be another service that's going to run from like 5 to 7. Either another church is coming here, or we're all about to pile in the church vans and literally go to another church. And then sometimes you even have evening service. I am not exaggerating, y'all. There have been days I have been to 3 church service, 3 of them, none of them under 2 hours. So don't try to come up in my chat playing me like this competition about time thing is not real. I've lived it, okay? And I've seen the like complaints of like, oh my goodness, we're going to your mother's, like my stepfather, for instance, talking to my mom, right? Like, oh, we're going to your mother's church. Oh no, we're gonna be in your parents' church all day, right? So y'all, that's how you know they don't really want it. They don't want to be in church all afternoon.
Well, as a former member of the parking ministry at a trans-denominational church, they were just beyond having denomination.
Oh, beyond that.
Beyond it. It was a really wonderful place to be, I have to say. But the services could get long. It did feel that way. And being in the parking ministry, I'm showing up early in the morning before most.
Oh yeah, before cars. Cars. You have to be there before cars. Yeah.
So I'm getting there at like 6:45
early,
or something, and leaving at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Because if you're parking ministry, they want you there at 6:45. Because usually that's a lot of times around when the people who are working, the worship team, the tech team, those people have to come, and they want to make sure that y'all make sure they don't park in the wrong places, right? Because if parking ministry ain't there at 6:45, when I pull up as a drummer, I'm gonna just park in that spot right in front of the building. I might have equipment to bring in that, so they need you there to be like, no.
Well, you can unload. But then you have to.
No, I ain't talking about unloaded. Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm here to unload, but then I'm gonna just leave my car right there. So you got to be there. That's what I'm saying. You got to enforce the rules. Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to mess up your check. That church paid its band. And
yeah,
a few of the band members, maybe even all of them, would donate the money back to the church. Like they didn't
really.
And this is
thousands
of people per service. Thousands of people per service.
No. We got to talk to them.
This is California, and a lot of these guys were in their 50s and 60s, so they probably were pretty.
Yeah, no, they're good. They didn't need the money. Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. It's just
that's,
it's just paying the church. Paying your musicians is such a huge conversation. Something maybe we've talked about it like once, but I don't think we've like super ever done an episode like focused on it. But it's just so interesting because if you create a culture with expectations, we're going to pay you, but you're going to donate it back. then it's essentially the same culture as when you don't pay your musicians. But I've always said that that's fine, right? Because people volunteer
It's a
for
choice.
things. It's choice, exactly. And the church is kind of doing the right thing by paying them, and then as long as nobody's compelling them to, if they just want to give it back, then
that's
that's what they do. Matter of fact, I think my grandparents did that most of the time until they retired. I don't think. Matter of fact, even when they were retired, they were paying to keep the lights on in the church, so they weren't really making any money from it. All right, let's jump into this. Yeah, let's jump into this video just so we're not here all day, even though it's been a fantastic and fun conversation already. And definitely shout out to everybody in the chat. I see PC, I see Look at the Trees, Al Trucker's here. Appreciate you.
Crystal's here and the
yep, PC. Anarchist is here. Great to see you. Oh wait, what is it? Let me make sure I'm reading this.
It's I Anarchist.
Like it.
And
Thank you.
I Claudius. Please let me know.
All right, and Sheldon's in the house. Paying back to the church is wild since churches don't pay taxes. That's a good point. Yeah, it's just like you earned your money, you can keep it, but that's part of where people are. I could tell you this: they're probably more likely to be true believers if they're doing that.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, they're probably members of the church, and that's just how they get down.
To the Lord, that's probably how they look at it. Yeah, I'm doing my part.
Yeah, exactly. All right, y'all. We'll roll the tape.
It's hardly initiated. Philip Mitchell on here with the guys. He asking him why he don't go to church. This ought to be good right here.
Why you don't have
I could just tell, first off, some of y'all some of y'all probably fell out y'all chairs. Culture shock. Yeah, me too. We covering because we don't get the opportunity necessarily to cover a lot of black content creators, and he's like younger. We were watching a video last night in Gather, and it was with Elon Musk's daughter, and she kind of has like a very heavy Valley Girl aesthetic going on. Yeah. And there were just times it would just like jump out at you, and like Sumami reminded, like, she's young. This is how young people get down these days. Like it's all good. So look, it's cool. We got a young content creator we responded to. It's all good. Let's go. Let's have some fun.
The world would be very boring. The world would be very boring if we all sounded.
You goddamn right. Exactly.
I was gonna say that was the latter, but now you're gonna bring it to the main front. I'm gonna be honest. I just truly have not found a church that I feel very comfortable at. And
what are you looking for? What's going to make you comfortable?
I feel
nicer
like
furniture.
The main thing with me is I love not only community, but I really like to receive a message that's relevant to what I'm going through, what I can apply. And I really like the community of strong men.
Okay. Let me just hit y'all with this real quick. When he was very first asked the question, he paused. And any sensible person would assume he was trying to gather his thoughts, think about the question, reflect on the question, and then he answered genuinely. He was like, let me think about that. I would really like some community and a good message and strong men, right? Something in my brain clicked when he paused. Because the dude did ask him straight up, like, what are you looking for? What would, like, bring you into the church? A woman, bro. We talk about women. Let's just be honest. My thoughts is why men don't go to church. It's why they do or why they don't is the same answer. A woman. That's it. To me, he thought about the question. He was like, I probably shouldn't say I'm gonna just go where my woman is going. So let me think of an actual content Christian response to the answer. But I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on in the man's head. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just projecting. I'm probably just projecting. But there was something about that pause that made me think he trying not to say a woman.
Well, that may be. That was one of the chief reasons I kept going to church for years. I wanted to meet the future Mrs. Friend.
Yeah.
And I met a lot of really great ladies that were completely uninterested in dating me. And a few that were.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's not a, in my opinion, it's not a bad reason, unless you don't believe what the people in that church believe, because you could be pulling,
True.
It's you could be making it harder on yourself than it needs to be.
So I have always talked about the fact that because I used to want to be a dating coach. That's the career I was preparing for. And one of the things I really started to think about is like, there's not a lot of places where we say it's like okay to pursue somebody, and in large part that's due to like just the incessant nonstop harassment women face.
Yeah,
and
sometimes.
and in order to like make society like a reasonable place where you can just exist and not have to worry about being sexually harassed, like that's kind of what it is, right? But because if you think about it, it's like it's not really appropriate to try to like go out of your way to like hit on somebody at work, because that could be bad, right? Approaching a random stranger at the grocery store, kind of weird. Even something like a mall, like a shopping mall or something. Because you remember, I used to talk to people very explicitly about this. Like, if you're a man, especially if you're, and the reason, and just in case anybody's wondering about the asymmetry, like we have a certain mating culture as humans. We may not think about it a lot, but the expectation is men court women. The flip happens all the time. Matter of fact, I encourage any non-male person to do it, but definitely as people who self-identify as men, you feel the pressure to initiate and pursue. And as a matter of fact, I think this is why dating apps are so popular, is because it's very difficult to find a space where it's just like normal to be here to want to meet somebody, right? And I used to always say, like, with that in mind, like one of the very few places is like bars and clubs, right? But like, what if you're not really into that whole kind of drinking out on the town scene? Like, if that's not really you, for a lot of people who want to, in their minds at least, have a more wholesome place to meet people, churches do encourage people to come and meet one another and start families and be interested in each other, and couples ministries if you're together, and singles ministries if you're not. There's a legit thing there, because there's not a whole lot of other places you can go kind of with, hey, I'm looking for somebody on the list of reasons you're here, and we go, yeah, that's okay. If you join a hot yoga class as a guy and you say, I'm here because there's going to be lots of single attractive women, and I join hot yoga because I'd really love to meet somebody, it's like, no, you're a fucking creep, get out of here. Right? Like, so that's kind of what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Well, we men have it tough in that respect, because you just don't know when you approaching someone else is going to be welcomed and when it won't be. I think the best thing we can do is be very polite, and hope that politeness is returned. It sometimes is not, but I think most of the time, in my experience, it has been politely returned. With a lack of interest or interest, you get it or you don't, and it's that simple. And you can always walk away, because somebody is looking for you, whoever you are out there. I'm sure you came across that in your training. But it's just true. It's not even something your grandma would tell you to make you not be sad. Like, it's literally true. Somebody is looking for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wherever you are.
And let me throw a little personal spiciness into this. I think my dad just continues to go along with Christianity for women in his life. And I'm speculating. He hasn't told me this, but this just because with certain men, you could tell they're not really Christian until a Christian woman is around, and now all of a sudden things are different. Like,
they put on that hat.
Yeah, like all of a sudden you bowing your head and you saying grace. And me and my dad just hanging out. And again, hang on, y'all. You could say, well, Jay, your dad knows you're an atheist. So, he's respecting the fact that you're an atheist when you guys are alone, and then maybe when his woman's around, he feels like, you know, y'all with her now, and that's y'all guess, so you're gonna do. But y'all, I'm telling, even going back to when I was very religious, my dad was never really into it. You see what I'm saying? And so it's not a change. It's not like something has changed. He's always been this way. And my suspicion is he don't really have too much interest in Christianity, but he definitely, the women he dates are definitely the type of like, God help me find my car keys, God is everything type of women who, like a lot of black women, y'all, they won't even consider dating a non-Christian. And I'm wondering if any of that's going to come into this, but that's definitely a big part of it for me that we're not talking about. Because it's kind of cute to say like, oh, you know, you might go to church to meet somebody nice. Like that's kind of accepted. What people don't often think through though is when it goes through to the point of you won't date somebody unless they believe like you, right? And I do think that's the case for a lot of people.
Can we get Father Locker as a guest on Hot Program?
Father Locker as a guest, that would be interesting. I'll ask him actually. I'll ask him. He might pop in because he's kind of chilling usually on Sunday afternoons. Yeah, if there's not something too important going on, he might do that. He might do that actually if I ask him.
Please do.
Some message that makes.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I hear a lot of I'm spiritual, not religious. And this is one of those things like I need you to define to me what you mean so that I understand. And for our audience, please know that not everybody uses that term spiritual the same way. There are people who are fond of Christian values, which are just values quite often. Like Jesus didn't invent anything. Christianity didn't invent values. None of their values did they invent. None of them. They all pre-existed Judaism. They all pre-existed Christianity. There's no innovation there. But people do like to go a la carte and cherry pick things. A Christian value is tithing, but a lot of people don't give 10% of their money or don't want to. Right. And, you know, whatever churches still make it, some of them. I'm currently looking for real estate in Indiana. And one thing I always look for with great interest is churches that have gone out of business.
Because you can get a good deal on a lot of space?
You can get a good deal. Oh my gosh, there's one right now. I mentioned it last week. Like, I want to buy it. I can afford, I'd have to make payments, and I don't want to do that necessarily at this point in my life. Sure. I want to just store money away from my wife and daughter, you know, when I get
right.
You don't have to struggle. But I want to buy, it used to be a church. It was a museum. It used to be a church. But I look for it because I really want to start a bar. So people can say, so people can say when their wife says, "Where were you?" I was in church.
You should call it the sanctuary or something.
I would call it church.
Oh, church. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm in like a GTA motorcycle club, and motorcycle clubs also have weekly meetings, right? And you have to be a full patch member to join the meeting. And it's it's a real meeting. Like, you vote. Like, the purpose, like, people don't realize this, but in motorcycle club culture, like, what you earn when you go from hang around to prospect to full patch member is a vote, right? For the club's business, right? That's what you earn with your patch as a vote. And so that's every Sunday and it's called church, right? So that's what motorcycle clubs call it. And so like another club might hit us up, oh yeah, I want to get together for a ride on Sunday. Oh, we got church on Sunday, but yeah, we'll link up with y'all after type deal. Yeah. You remember that because there's a lot of shows like when we started at 3:30, right? Where I'd be like, oh, I gotta go. It's 6. I gotta get ready for my meet. I'd always say my meeting, right? But that's what it's called. Yeah, it's church. All right, y'all, let's roll some tape. Oh, no. First, I wanted to acknowledge this comment. I think the black church is an oxymoron in the sense that the preach against lust, but the church is a lust factory. I only have to sit in the front since there's a lot of nice things jiggling. So I would say this about all churches, but maybe your experiences with the Black church. But I've definitely been in churches not only is that a thing, but like I've literally been in churches where like the ministers are in the pastor's office, like talking about the women in the front row. So that's definitely part of the culture, and it's obviously problematic.
You hurt, and it don't feel relevant, but you need it.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
That's what I mean. Those are the ones I need.
Okay.
That's what I need. I love those.
Okay.
And I also like having strong.
I had a 150cc. My bike got stolen, but yeah, I'm talking about in GTA as a video game. But yeah, I'm a motorcycle enthusiast, even though I don't have one at the moment.
Brothers around me.
That's powerful.
I don't want to be around all women.
That's powerful.
In community, especially in my spiritual life. I feel like I'm less even vulnerable. I don't feel like all women around me is a safe space. I'm just keeping it real.
Okay.
Spiritually, I've noticed when I'm around brothers, I'm more honest about where I'm at. I'm more likely to say I'm struggling with my lust. I'm more likely to be honest about my masculine struggle.
Come on.
I'm not as honest and vulnerable around women.
100%.
So in that space, it was like exponential growth for me spiritually.
Yeah.
Because I was able to tell some of my darkest struggles and confess it in that group. And it was the most honest I've ever been among any group of men. I was never really honest in church. I felt like church was performative, if anything. I felt like I was standing there and dancing because everybody else was dancing. You know, I felt like I was moving because the pastor per pressure said, why this pew not going crazy like that pew over there? So now I feel like I got to go to crazy because they over there going crazy. I wasn't really being authentic in that environment. So in that small group, it changed things for me because I was able to be honest and vulnerable around brothers and get to the root of my problems.
Okay, yeah. Can I jump in here?
Yeah. Go ahead.
There is we see it in our culture today that there is a concern where men don't feel they are being valued. They feel they're being vilified. The term patriarchy is thrown out there a lot. Not everybody's that is lumped in with the patriarchy has a role that is a role of power. They're just the same color, for instance, something like that. So they're getting stepped on, but there are people saying that they're the ones doing the stepping on. It may be that for this man in the video, he needs not to be criticized by a woman because that might hurt, right? The way he grew up, he might have had women in his life or a woman in his life that was quite critical of were quite critical of him, and that just kept causing him pain. Or he has dated women where he felt he wasn't valued, to where he felt he was pulling more than his share of the load. And so he doesn't really want to hear a woman's point of view of how he should pull himself up out of his different struggles that he has. And, you know, he mentioned lust. He may not want a woman that he's attracted to talking to him about, you know, how would you say it? Becoming satisfied with only his faith instead of him turning to his body for satisfaction, right? He might not want to hear that from her because he's just going to be thinking about it the next time he, you know, pleasures himself or something like that. So I don't know this guy's history, but that's kind of how some of those, I guess, desires for, let me be in a group of men and figure this out, are set up. It's not that he's secretly homosexual or anything like that. You know, it could just be that it's easier for him to feel that other men are relating to him.
So, well. Yeah, so you were, so you're taking it to the men, well, which is good because the episode is why men don't go to church. So yeah. You're talking about why men don't go to church. Well, Damn you, staying on topic. But, no, but no, that's really interesting. It was my girlfriend asked me yesterday, what's an incel? And it was very interesting to try to
not knowing what that was
to try to explain this phenomenon of like, they're men who can't get laid essentially. But even if you look it up, you'll very quickly hear that a lot of them do have certain attitudes that a lot of women don't want to be associated with, right? In a sense of entitlement, and yes, a lot of sometimes patriarchal and misogynist ideas, but also like mixed with like grievance politics and like, well, women don't need men anymore, and that's why I can't find a good woman because the world's gone woke or whatever, right? But to your point, I guess what I'm getting at is a lot of men do identify with those values, right? Because they told us you're important, you're the provider, you're the leader, you're the head of the household, right? Like there's a lot of, yes, you could say ego, but there's a certain values and expectations, right, that were built into a lot of men. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that comes out of the church. So it makes sense that men then want to find solace with other men who share those values and thoughts, and then also the commiseration of, I'm not feeling great as a provider right now, I'm falling into this struggle or that struggle or whatever. So there is something to that in the sense of a man trying to find somewhere he can really offload or commune with other men versus a different type of church, maybe one that is just worship focused and he's not doing a men's group or whatever, and doesn't feel that, right? Kind of just feels like he's coming and going and it's not really speaking to his life. I was going to go go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Stephanie Helms putting a fine point on it. Jordan Peterson has made an entire career out of butthurt guy feels.
Yes. Absolutely, Steph. Absolutely. And
thank you.
And he is considered like one of the intellectuals in chief of most incels, right? Like it's all too typical if you were to talk to a incel for them to hit you with well, have you heard of Jordan Peterson? Yeah, I have, dude. Yeah, I have heard of Jordan Peterson. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Pocket. Go ahead.
Oh, so I was just going to say that, like, I was going to take this somewhere different.
Okay, go ahead.
Which is just the power of small groups. And the fact that I see this as one of the shifts in modern Christianity and in church culture. And I think it is, in some sense, almost make or break for church communities. And I also think we need to think about it beyond churches. And I have in very interesting ways. So what I'm getting at, y'all, is small groups feel amazing. And when you are trying to build community, it's actually, I believe, a small group that makes you feel part of a community much more than just participating in the larger group. So even myself, like as a worship musician, even as an atheist, the last church I went to was very small group focused. They were called connection groups. The pastor could literally get up on Sunday morning, and he would do this sometimes from time to time because you're trying to tell new people how important it is. So he would start talking about connection groups, and then he would say, well, how many of y'all here are in a connection group? And I'm talking like over 80% of the church raises their hands. Almost everybody in the church is in a connection group. And I'm in a connection group, even though I'm an atheist. And the connection groups were awesome. So if you were in college, your connection groups were single gender. you were either in a connection group for young women or a connection group for young men. And I sometimes visited with those groups and saw those groups. But I was in a group for adults. When you were in the adult church, you were just in sort of a mixed connection group. And usually like they try, couples would stay together, right? So there were a bunch of couples in my group and some single people too. But if you're married, you're going to stay in a connection group with your partner. That actually feels like your church after a while. That's like your real group.
Interesting.
Because when you go to church, like you're all just kind of sitting there, you're kind of doing the passive thing, right? When you're in your connection group, first off, now you start by like reiterating whatever the pastor talked about. So whatever the pastor preached about in the connection group, you're going to kind of start there, right? Mm-hmm. But it would go off and we really got to know each other. And we also did things like sometimes you would take a week off from connection group and you would just have like a game night and we would just invite guests in. Like, oh, my one black friend, I want you to come in my connection group. We're just going to be playing games or whatever. Sometimes we would have just dinner. We watched a lot of sporting events together. Oh, Saturday, we're just going to go over to the house, drink beer and literally just drink beer and watch football. That was like a thing to do with my church friends. We're just going to drink beer and watch football. So it was really fun. And even like people I would hang out with or like date during that time of my life would say like, I don't understand why you do all the things you don't have to do. I get it. You play at the church. I get that that's your gig. So that means you got to be at rehearsal and you got to be at their services. But like, why do you go on all their trips? Why do you go to this like connection group? And I would be like, the best part about being in a band is being in the band. Yeah. And like, making friends and like having all this experience together. And I said, I would go to the connection group. I go on the trips because the keyboard players there are our two main guitarists are there. The bassist is there, right? So that's where the band is. Matter of fact, I'd be the only one missing. It'd be a little weird if the drummer wasn't here, right? So these small groups are really powerful. And to some extent, like even something like Gather, like the virtual online space we have, this wonderful place here. We used to host our shows in Gather too. It's been wonderful for a lot of us because even though we're part of this wider YouTube community and this content creation space, it's very limited in how much we can really get to know each other. But because of Gather, we have like a smaller community where a lot of us are getting to know each other. So like a lot of people, we all see PC on the regular in chat. I feel like I talk to PC every day. Mm-hmm. I've seen PC on camera and I'm talking like voices, like that's my homegirl. And there's so many people out there who are like a part of my everyday life. But I'm gonna show y'all something that people didn't even know about, which is if you go to the beach where we have all of our tents, I set up these tents over here. God, let's get rid of that. We set up these tents, and these tents these are all different Gather spaces. If you go into them, they're all private spaces. And we set those up. They all have their own links and they all have their own passwords. And the idea was that we wanted to have small groups. And so we wanted to, even within Gather, have a space where like you could have a small group that's like something like 4 to 8 people, and you'd have a separate Gather space that's only for your small group. Because the idea was, we were trying to grow it, and it was going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was going to be really important to help people feel connected, that they could actually be part of small groups. So I say all that to say that like small groups within larger communities is actually something I think is an incredibly powerful tool in community building, and I think we should be doing it, even if you're just talking about just like secular community building. It's still a good idea to kind of strategically and intentionally have smaller groups within the larger groups. And so I actually resonate with what this man is saying, because going to a church that does have a small group, and in his case, I guess he's talking about, you know, a specific group for men. And like I said, the church I was in, when you're older, you're not doing a single gender group. But still, it's like, I get it. Like, I get that. Like, that does feel life-changing compared to a church where you're just expected to show up, give your money, go home, and come back next week. When you're part of a small group that meets during the week and y'all really getting to know each other, now you feel like you're doing church. And all of a sudden, when they start saying church is the people and church is the community and all of that, it starts to feel so much more authentic. Yeah.
Well, church.
So,
You know, the Bible says, you know, the church is the people. It's literally that. And again, you're right. There's a lot of power in small groups, and you get enough of those together, you have a large group. So if you can get people to be on purpose, you really have something. But I will say probably most of the magic is made with the interpersonal connections that are one-to-one, to where people in the group get to know each other, like you becoming very good friends with the bass player, let's say, or the guitarist, you know, where you're talking 2-3 times a week or something like that, and then making a lifelong friend because of that. That's the real power, because this guy is looking towards, the guy in the video is looking towards men to help him shore himself up, right? He wants to be a better man. He wants to be a better man, and he doesn't believe women will get him there. Be that based on his own experiences, or him just folding his arms and thinking, how would they know?
Yeah.
When women throughout history have supported men. And stronger,
and we might, you know, agree or disagree to different extents about that, but I certainly understand the value of having a space where a particular gender can talk about their unique issues, right? Yeah. All right, let's keep rolling.
I think, can I say something about this?
Of course.
So I think you just
Hey,
broke something I think is a categorical,
And I seen Maya sneaking here too.
major issue.
Speaking of which, I'll be on Bad Science Sunday tonight, 9:30 on the Maya Adkisson channel. Be there.
In the culture. And I think you just broached something I think is a cancer in the culture, and that is the veneer of the American Western Church. The veneer of perfection that makes us feel like everybody got to be okay and be perfect to be in a gathering, right? So it's kind of like we got to have the comfort to say it's okay to not be okay. If there's any place that people should be able to be honest about what they're going through.
To all my soldiers, we are knee deep in spiritual warfare, and Hardly Initiated has created
Now
some
this is
additional...
he did.
No, sir.
He
Don't
did.
do that.
And also, like, I can't. It also catches me off guard, y'all, because like I said, I haven't seen this, so I'm reacting to this in real time, and this makes it so hard, right? Because we're sitting here, we're doing our best to like humanize people that believe this stuff. And like, you've got some struggles and you want to be part of a group and we're trying to understand your motivation and And then you just, we're knee deep in spiritual warfare. And then it's like, all that hits you. And it's very difficult for me to deal with. Because again, like I'm looking at a grown man who is talking about spiritual warfare. Also, like, y'all, I don't know if y'all think about this, but think about the war on drugs. You can't fight a war on an inanimate object. Wars are, by definition, human conflict, and which means when you go to war, the other side is always people. And so even the spiritual warfare, it's like, who do you think the enemy is? Now, a lot of them are going to tell you it's themselves, but if you really think about it sincerely, this is why I always say, like, it's us, it's atheists. Godlessness is the enemy, because the spiritual warfare is supposed to be to bring about to basically subject the world to God's will. Yes, that includes yourself, but man, it's like if I really asked this guy about atheists or people who don't believe, I think the things he said would be cause for alarm. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, we do hear from church members a lot of spiritual warfare is from Satan, right? Satan is Satan has demanded to sift you out. The devil's on my back, and so to speak. I mean, obviously, these are common terms that they are open to use, often use, and so it really does come down so often in life. How do I master myself? How do I become the person I want to be? And that I don't care what your socioeconomic status is, that question comes up.
Right.
You know, Paris Hilton has asked herself that question. And the poorest guy has asked himself that question.
Absolutely.
So have the best people
All right, let's see. Maybe we can skip that.
The biological brother of Jesus said, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another. Watch this. That you might find healing. That according to what James wrote, there is healing that follows confession of sin. Just like you said, you confess with them brothers. And James says when we have that type of community, when we can confess sin with one another, what comes on the backside of that, when you're doing that confession with the right people who's been assigned to you, not everybody can handle that. James says what happens after that is healing. There's a lot of us who would find more healing if we had safer place to confess. Now, James is writing that, listen to me, not to a small group. James is writing that to the first church, the church that was born on the day of Pentecost. When you pick up the New Testament of the Bible, the very first letter ever written to the church was the letter of James. So then when you pick up the letter of James, let's say you open your Bible tonight, you hold the letter of James in your hand. What you're holding in your hand is the very first New Testament document ever written to a church, not to a small group, to a church. By the time James is writing that, the church has thousands of people in the church. The church grew from 120 to 3,000 people with one sermon, and then 5,000 people by the time we get to the first chapters in Acts. So when James writes his letter, so every time you pick up the letter of James, you're holding in your hand the first document ever written to a church, watch, with thousands of people in it. And what does he say to a church with thousands of people in it? Confess your plural sins to one another and pray for one another that you may find healing. He ain't said that to a small group. He said that to a body of believers who was a church. So that means if James is writing to a church, follow me. If that's the first letter God gave his church, then we should take that letter very serious. And in that letter, there's a command for us to watch, to stop being phony, to stop being fake, to stop doing church with a veneer, to stop doing church acting like we got it all together. Everybody in a Christian gathering has issues and struggling with sin and problems. The problem is we don't feel safe to confess. People don't know how to pray. And because of that, you have people who attend church every Sunday who are suffering in silence because they feel like the people in here is going to judge me if they find out. I drink, I smoke, I sex, I blah, blah, blah. Fill in the blank. Confess your sins to one another. He's talking to a church. And pray.
All right, super confident. Go ahead.
Why is the young man with the microphone on the right, on my right, here? He has
this is his channel. Get out of here. You know why he's here. You send me stuff of people like him. You know exactly what this is. This is the reaction content that isn't even a reaction, where you just sit there and you nod, sit in the corner. But what you're saying is at least do us the decency and be transparent enough, or at least make them full screen and put yourself in the corner, like a respectable, Yeah, like a respectable no reaction content creator makes.
Yeah,
Have the decency to put yourself small in the corner.
Is he asleep with his eyes open?
We're small in the corner and we're actually giving commentary.
Oh, YouTube, please create a filter where I can block
This is
types of AI content entirely from my feed. I don't want to see it, and I don't want to see people just sitting there.
Where we are insulted by the layout of this stream. It is highly offensive.
I'm shocked.
You do not deserve this much screen space, young man.
Exactly.
All right. So,
young man, make yourself small and humble before people who are actually talking.
Exactly. So what's interesting is, dude is so wrong, but it's the confidence. You can, and again, this is the preacher, the bravado, the speak with this certainty. But the other thing is, and this is why so much religion, I think, is just really so misguided. And honestly, it's just, I think we're just done with it. I think we need to just tell people, sorry, the jig is up. It just doesn't work. But it's this way, it's this obsession with sin. And it does a couple things. One, it ensures that Christians are never concerned with real world issues. You hear what the guy said. I don't want people to know I drink. I don't want people to know I smoke. I don't want people to know I have sex. And Lord knows I don't want people to know I masturbate and watch pornography. And I have been, like I talked about, college age young men. I wasn't in their group, but we'd go to conferences, we go to events, we go on retreats and different things. And I'd be put in a small group with, the other young men and get to see what these small groups are like, especially when they're single gender. And y'all, it is literally like a MAGA Mike Johnson, Covenant Eyes, porn thing.
Stop. You said MAGA Mike Johnson.
Yeah.
How much do you know?
I heard the rumor that he's been on Grindr. Yeah. It would not surprise me not one iota if it's confirmed that that's valid and MAGA Mike has been in the closet. But listen, it's like people, y'all. It's hard to describe it, but it's an obsession with porn. There's this weird. Okay, let's put it to you like this. Let me put it to you like this, y'all. A lot of these kids, and this is what's so sad about all this. A lot of this is so sad. These kids are already dedicated to Christ. First off, you have young people who moved here to help start this church from like Iowa to Michigan. Like they've already moved to like help build the church. And now even the ones who are in college, y'all, of course they're dedicated to Christ. They're like in a freaking college ministry, right? And they're serious about it. They're not just like even just like going to college worship night. They're in a small group and they're doing Bible studies and all this other stuff, right? So now think about it. They're not gonna be heavy drinkers. Most of them don't drink. Most of them don't smoke weed. Most of them are not having sex. Most of them don't have girlfriends. Maybe there's a couple that have girlfriends and maybe they're messing around with their girlfriends and that's a source of struggle for them, but not a lot. A lot of them are incels, to be honest. But one thing they all have access to and can get caught up in is pornography, and they often do. And so I would be misleading you if I said anything other than it's weird that they're so obsessed with pornography. It becomes the number one thing. And I think that's largely why, because sin is so focused on lifestyle issues and they're already dedicated Christians. So there's just not much else in their lifestyle. And so literally I have watched them sit around in groups crying actual tears over the guilt about their pornography. And so when this man talks about the healing and the peace that comes from confession, no, really it's shame. and the idea is to force you to share shame-worthy information with the larger group. And now they say it's healing and forgiveness and all this stuff, but no, it's really about humiliating you and forcing you to say, yes, I do in fact touch myself and watch adult content when I'm alone in my dorm room, which is a weird thing to have to share. So it's really annoying because, again, it makes it so that Christians are never concerned with real world problems. You don't ever hear. Think about it. How many young men's groups will get together and talk about the fact that billionaires are running the country and they're about to take Social Security away from old people? Literally, how many of them are going to say, my grandparents might be fucked and not able to pay their bills or buy food for themselves? How many of these groups will talk about that as a sin problem? If you're guessing somewhere between 0 and 0, you're in the right ballpark. Okay? And the other thing it does is it prevents them from ever talking about sin in the church. Again, how many groups are going to get together and say, we really need to talk about sexual misconduct among pastors? You know, we're trying to evangelize, we're trying to spread the love of Jesus to people, and it's a really big problem that pastors keep fucking everybody. What is going on here? When are they going to talk about, hey, you know, we kind of been persecuting a lot of minority and marginalized groups. How many churches are going to speak out against that and say, we need to stop the bad behavior? We are literally hurting people. They're not interested in any of that. They're not interested in real world problems, and they're not interested in real problems in the church because they've been made to obsess over problems that nobody cares about. I do not care how much you drink. It means nothing to me. I do not care how much you smoke weed. I do not care how much you masturbate. I do not care how much you lust after other women. I do not care if you have sex with your girlfriend and you're not married yet. So this is a really tough thing. All right, I think I can sneak and hit play. And oh, here's my OneBlack Friend. Okay, we're good. All right, let's rock and roll.
Confession and prayer.
So it sounds real good, but
No.
honestly, like he said,
Yep, sounds real good.
He speaks.
He speaks. We've heard his voice. We haven't heard his voice in 6 minutes.
I don't know if anybody said it, but it's hard to find that type of community where you can really confess, you know, and get stuff off your chest around some real genuine brothers that's not gonna run and tell your business to everybody, who not gonna belittle your problems, you know, who really gonna be there for you and pray for you. We don't have that kind of community. It's hard to find. You know, it's very hard to find. You know, especially these days, it's hard to find a real church. They out there, but you can't be real picky. You know, you really gotta know the essentials. Like, if they got, as long as they got, you know.
All right, gang. Now I'm gonna just keep it real. I'm sticking with the answer of women. So here's what we gonna do, y'all. We gonna set up a little experiment. You know me. We got to do a little science, y'all. And we're gonna have 4 groups. We're gonna have churches with a very low woman to man ratio. Where churches mostly men, some women sprinkled in here and there. And one of these churches is just going to be a regular. You come on Sunday, praise Jesus, give us some money and go home. And the other one is going to be, we have small groups, particularly small single gender groups. So there's a men's group, okay? Then we're going to have another condition where we have small groups and lots of women in the church, but I ain't even gonna hold you. They're gonna be unattractive. They just not gonna be that good looking. And then the final condition. Oh, sorry. We're gonna have a church where we have small groups, and the women is super attractive. And I think we should have one where we have super attractive women and no small group. I think the most popular choice for most men will be the church with attractive women and no small groups. In other words, I don't buy them. And I think if we really put the choice to them, this is where the fly women go to church versus this church over here has a small. Maybe we should just do that comparison, right? Just this one has a small group, but the women are not attractive. This one does not have a small group, but it has attractive women. Let's see what y'all pick. I think they go into the one with the attractive women. What you think, my one black friend?
Probably the one with the attractive women.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the inset video, the video within the video. You were watching a video within a video within a video. The two gentlemen that were having the discussion there. If you do need help wherever you are, because again, the last 2 years have been like a struggle for me. But I had plenty of people on the phone with me talking, right? Or here in my neighborhood, friends in my neighborhood, chatting with me to kind of help me out and get me sorted. And a lot of those friends were men who were just like, okay, I know you just had like a really nasty injury that you're recovering from. You've been out of work. You saved up all this money and you're spending it to keep your wife and baby afloat. You have all these frustrations. How are you doing? And my answer was not to sugarcoat how I'm doing. I'm effing struggling. This is hard. This is the hardest phase of my life. You know, oh, this too shall pass, you know, blah, blah, blah. Sure. And I'll ask them, how did you deal with it? A surprising number of people said I never had to go through any of that.
Wow.
Which is nice for them, but there were some who did. And they stood there and we talked, and they talked to me about weathering the storm. And if I needed help with something, you know, and they were there to help me, they would help. And instead of walking away when we finished that task, they stood there. What else? This is not the hardest thing you're going to do today. It's just something you're getting done today because you have to get things done. I think being there for others is often underestimated, it just happens. It's a thing that happens. And it's unfortunate when the people don't show up. But it's also a mistake not to peacefully ask others, hey, can you listen to me? And if you have something to add, can you speak to me? And I would further say, because this actually happened, where I had to say to my wife, my brother, and his wife, saying to them, I feel pretty beat up right now based on what all of you are saying. I don't think any of them expected that. But the way they were speaking to me instantly changed after I said that. Because as far as I'm concerned, I didn't call Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins may be welcome to visit me in my home. But I didn't call him. All of you are here. All of you know me. And I have that much tolerance for the way that you're speaking with me right now. And I'm driving. So let's make this peaceful right now. Let's make this a peaceful conversation. Yeah. And if that is what you need, right? If you need peaceful conversation, find people that can give that to you.
Well, yeah,
this is kind
of the problem for me is I really think that so I was listening to something yesterday, and I think we might cover it on the channel at some point. But it's like an hour of people critiquing religion, and somebody says the biggest trick that religion ever did was not convincing some people that a God exists. It was convincing everyone else that this is an idea you can't ridicule. And I think
have they read those holy books?
Yeah, I think this is part of that is we let people give us these excuses, and then they serve as sort of conversation stoppers or challenge stoppers. Oh, I don't want to have a difficult conversation about my religion, so I say, oh, it's where I get community. Really, we should be saying, it's not really good for you to get community somewhere based on lies, especially not if you're getting that community by being in community with people who are harming other people, again, particularly marginalized groups. Because again, if you don't care about the least of these or the people who are already having a hard time in society, that seems to be really bad. And then being honest about the fact that there's nothing unique about that. That, like I said, like we need to build. You can do that anywhere, and we should do that for people. Anybody, we should all be there for your neighbors and there to help each other through hard times, or share what strategies we use to overcome hard times. But we allow religious people to basically assume the position of having a monopoly on community, which also then has the unintended side effect of weakening our impulse to community building outside of church, right? Like, it's harder to build community in this YouTube space, and it's harder to build community, like, say, in Discord or Gather or something like that, just because the act of intentionally building community feels like church building, feels like cult building, and people resist. Like, even if I'm just like, yo, you should make sure you can gather a couple times a week just to check on the crew and have regular, right? It starts to feel like an obligation. And I think a lot of that is literally because the church has successfully branded itself as the primary community building organization, such that community building now feels like church building, and it shouldn't be that way. But it's very difficult for us to have that critique because we're so used to religious people literally trying to convince us that they have almost a supernatural sense of community and a supernatural a sense of belonging that goes beyond what we could create on our own, right? And then, that's part of where the problem lies.
Well,
also,
go ahead, Paco.
I was just going to respond to Jester's comment. Can I go to small group with attractive women? Yeah,
yes,
that's
Jester,
maybe we should make that a condition too. That'll really tell us what their motivation is.
And Jester, you can lead that group if you so choose.
Yeah, but
you'll
also
everyone's phone number.
Look, it's true. It's fun. Part of the thing I liked about the small group I was in, even though I was an atheist, was I had a crush on the keyboard player, and so at first she wasn't in the band. She was just like part of the group, and literally by being in the connection group with us, being in a connection group with the rest of the band, seeing how much fun we have, and then the fact that she was like a really good piano player, and she started to feel left out, right? Like almost most of the rest of your group, at least the ones that can play instruments, we're part of the worship team. And so then when we come to connection group on Monday, we're having fun, telling stories, all this stuff. And so, yeah, like it's just real. It was definitely part of the fun. And then part of the expansion of the worship team really came from people being in small group and being like, oh, I feel left out. So yeah, it works. It definitely works. Hey, I like being around pretty girls. It's a weakness, perhaps. I don't know, but it's definitely something that can be exploited. I'll tell you that much.
As long as they got the gospel.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
You were gonna say something.
I think one of the things to keep in mind here, the bottom line is to get the help you need. And yes, it can be powerful in groups. It can be powerful one-on-one. There are places with free counseling. And literally, if you cannot pay, ask if you could do an exchange for that person. Maybe you detail cars or something like that, and just say, can I just trade you my labor for yours? And they're a lot of these medical professionals in the psychiatry field or mental health field, they're doing that at a lower rate because they really want the world to be a better place, and they know that means they have to make better people. They have to make good people better people, and bad people into somewhat decent people. There's a lot of that going on, and they will do that. They will do that. And they may just have you do community service too. Look, if you can prove to me you volunteered for this organization that I like, every minute you give them, I'll give you. I mean, it could be that simple. Because a lot of them want you, I'd say dang near all of them, want you healed. If they didn't choose that profession so that they could listen to other people's problems and just have a bit of schadenfreude where they're enjoying so much that other people are suffering.
Right.
And those people are out there, but I think those people are few. So, get the help you need, because there's only one you.
That's right.
Right.
Church does community well. Sorry, church does community well. That's true, but I don't think anyone should ever feel that what they're participating in is cultish.
Yeah, if
it clearly is not, and it's helping them.
I think that's part of the mythology that people buy into. I do think church does community, and this is gonna sound weird to y'all, but I think it has to. You gotta remember, to me, it's fake, and obviously so. Like I think that's the real problem these days, is that we're treating people like it isn't. Like, dude, like, you're grown. The idea that you think there's a magic man in the sky that created the universe and controls it and potentially intervenes, at whim. I just think that's out there. So I think all of those things the church has to give you, because it has to give you something. And so what it really gives you is community. That's its real product, in a sense. But in another sense, I think it's actually terrible at it. Right? It's giving you like a weak version of community, right? I actually, and this is part of the reason, like, I think evolution is so important, because evolution tells us that we actually have a common ancestry and a common origin, and it can be put out through this thing called evidence, which means we can all understand it and we can kind of share in it, and then we can build community based on genuine solidarity. I help my neighbor because they're my neighbor, and I don't know if something goes down and I need some help. The easiest person for me to reach out to, again, is going to be that same neighbor. Or like, building community, building relationships, like us here, like using the internet to find people that think different, that think like we do, and make relationships there. Like, I just think we've allowed the church to pretend that they have some literally almost supernatural, magical community building capability that the rest of us don't have. But in actuality, when you build community outside of church, you don't have to base that community building on lies and manipulation and like a evil worldview. So to me, that's almost inherently better. I'd almost say building community about anything non-religious is going to already just be superior to basing it in religion, because in religion, you got to believe the myths to participate in the community building, or at least you have to pretend to believe the myths to participate in the community building. So that's a detriment in my book. All right, let's roll some tape.
Sure. Gospel fit with your worldview of the gospel, and it's a biblical gospel, then that's the church you need to go to. Everything else can be, talked about. It can be, that can be, you can handle the rest of that, but unless the people in there is just crazy, then. But, you gotta love, Philip Mitchell. He always, he passionate. He always gonna, break it down, and and give you that real talk and that passion, that love, you know, and tell you just like it is. But unfortunately, you know, that's hard to find, you know.
You know what that does? It creates constant, perpetual release of all the things I'm carrying deep in my heart. And if I could be in a community of people that makes it easy for confession, and they know how to pray, and they wrap me in their arms, and I said, I'm struggling with lust, and they wrap me in the arms. I'm struggling with masturbation, and they wrap me in the arms. I'm struggling with pride, and they wrap me in the arms. I'm fighting in my marriage, and they wrap me in my arms. I'm struggling with weed, and they wrap me in arms. You know what that does? You feel the love of Christ in your sin, and we journey to a place of wholeness together. Now, doesn't that sound good?
Masturbation, pride, weed, being a good parent. None of that got nothing to do with the rest. I'm just trying to highlight this point to y'all. Most of us that are sincere adults, we would say these are not problems for the rest of the world. These are personal lifestyle concerns. And here's another thing. If they were so out of control that they were legitimately causing issues, then maybe they'd be a problem. And let's keep in mind that is not what Christians are talking about. And you have to keep that in the forefront of your mind. If somebody's coming to us and saying, I'm an alcoholic and I want some people to pour into my life to help me with alcohol, yeah, you got a real problem and you need some real help. Which, by the way, this small group shaming you and making you think that you have a sin problem when you have a drinking problem is actually not helping. And it would be better for you to get help from a real professional who actually has training and expertise in helping people overcome alcoholism, or even getting yourself into some sort of group or situation focused on that. Most of them, what they're saying is, I drink. And that's the problem. How much do you drink, brother? Well, I drink a beer or two, after work, and, maybe on the weekends, because I'm watching football all day on Sunday, maybe I'll have 3 or 4 throughout the course of the day. Bro, that's not a problem. Most of us just, who cares? It's not interfering in your marriage. It's not interfering in your ability to do your job. It's not interfering with your ability to raise your family. Like, you're upstanding gentleman. You never drink and drive. You've never been charged with anything. Again, nobody cares. You got a porn problem. So what does that mean? Are you jerking off at work? Did people find you watching porn in class? Did you?
Are you watching it on the subway?
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, I just from time to time in my dorm room when nobody's around, I watch porn on my phone and I masturbate. Again, nobody cares. You're not describing a real problem. I just want to emphasize that for y'all.
I'm gonna disagree.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna disagree.
Oh, here we go.
There's a scripture in the Bible, Genesis 17:1. I'll read it. When Abraham was 90 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Other versions will use the word perfect instead of blameless. So if you have a person who believes that their faith tells them not to do X, Y, Z, in this case, masturbate, per your example, and you can't help yourself, you want to masturbate, you have a problem. Excuse me, because you're trying, people legitimately trying to hold fast to their faith, but they have an issue to where they want that instant gratification that their faith isn't giving them. Now, think of that struggle. I just prayed about this, and now I'm looking up pictures of whatever, right? So that they can masturbate. Or now I'm looking for videos. I'm hurrying to Pornhub. I just prayed about this. There's a problem there thinking whatever the investment in their faith is, be they a tither, be they a volunteer, be they a person who has a casual interest, be they just a person who thinks, well, I can learn morality from the church. There they are, after spending weeks, months, years, what have you, pursuing the faith, masturbating. One thing I run into constantly on the internet, and I bet many people who watch Hot Program do, you put forth a very good argument to a person who has none. Their reply is, yeah, right, no, you're wrong, or just no, which I see a lot of because they can't reason. You have some of these people trying to get reasons. Why can't I overcome this? It's a form, Pocket Locker, of doubt. It's showing them that I have been lied to about the value of my faith. How come the power of the Holy Spirit is not as strong as my compulsion to pleasure myself? Pull that clip. Just kidding. Hot Program shorts. But yeah, why isn't that? So there is for you and me, it's no big deal. For many of our listeners, it will be no big deal. Viewers and listeners, it will be no big deal. But for them, understand it's a crisis. All that investment, Pocket Locker, and it doesn't work. So that's something we need to consider. Because if they've been given the Holy Spirit when they got baptized, they shouldn't even want to masturbate. They should be excited to save themselves for their, unless Jesus comes back earlier, their future spouse. That should be enough. The Holy Spirit should be enough. Their relationship with God should be enough. Their relationship with Jesus should be enough. It's not even enough to stop them from masturbating. So what is its value? Why are they putting forth all this investment? Because part of their brain says, I still believe it's worth it. I'm going to get there someday. I got to keep striving.
So actually, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. That's kind of what I'm trying to just say is that's the cost of that belief, right? That's what that belief has. Because essentially we're trying to reach, silly as it may seem, like we're trying to be sensitive to a believer's perspective, right? And I'm trying to show them this is the cost of you buying into this stuff, right? Is that you're obsessed with these things that to outsiders are just you, and they're just about you and your lifestyle. And I think at least from the way I believe, that would be a problem for me, right? Because I believed my Christian faith like led me to be a better person, that I was somehow making the world a better place by exercising my faith. And now when I look back at it, I realize, oh no, it was just more obsession with myself, right? And I was just constantly shaming myself and not worried about the things that were actually making the world a worse place to some extent, right? And then the extent where I was interacting with those things. So for instance, I worked at a church and was a community organizer. In large part, I was doing the things I thought I could do to help my community. I may wish I wasn't doing those things under the auspices of church leadership, right? I wish I wasn't doing those things as a full-time employee of the church, but I can understand that, hey, to the extent that I could help kids in the community, I did. And I shouldn't feel guilty about that because, you know, I drink and smoke weed. Drinking and smoking weed didn't stop me from helping kids, right? So and here's the other thing that's interesting that I kind of wanted to get our audience to think about, just because I just noticed it and it's kind of a spin, which is I think the actual title of the video he's responding to is called, because I just saw it, was called "Why Don't You Have a Church?" And so part of what I think is happening is actually something that I noticed about the community that we're in, and I've been noticing for years, in which is a lot of these dudes, particularly, and yeah, I could see this being particularly a problem with men because of the way men dominate the Christian content space. I think this whole conversation about why men don't go to church is sort of a sidestep, because I think part of the issue is a lot of these guys, they're internet Christians. And they're Christians in a way where, like, being a Christian has become like an important cultural marker for them.
It's
usually
fashionable.
Yeah, it's fashionable. Usually in justifying a broader set of social and cultural values. So, for instance, like, a lot of them just like the idea that men are supposed to be leaders, and a man's supposed to be the head of the household, and a man is a provider, and men, blah, 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 blah. And so and again, it ties right to incel culture and toxic masculinity in the whole nine, right? But a lot of those guys, even a spectrum, like, I think of like Otangelo and a lot of the jerks we deal with on the internet as being the same way. They have no interest in congregational Christianity, because congregational Christianity suffers for two problems. One, it's too soft. They don't like the idea of going to church every Sunday and having these like lovey-dovey, hugging old ladies. Like, that's not, for a lot of us, that was our favorite part of church, right? Being part of the community.
Yes.
We're supposed to love and serve our neighbors, and we've made nice friends here, and we're donating school supplies, and we're donating to the soup kitchens, and we're loving the community. They don't want no part of that. Okay, they don't want no part of that. And then on top of that, that's the silliness. That stuff reveals the silliness. Because when you go there, they hit you with the straight. They hit you with the straight narrative, right? They hit you with the Adam and Eve. They hit you with the gospel. Like, in other words, it's not intellectual Christianity. It's basic Sunday school Christianity. And I think a lot of these guys, they don't want to deal with that. They want debate, bro, philosophy, bro, intellectual Christianity, right? And so, and this is why it's weird, because I'm just putting this together, y'all, in real time. I actually think that a lot of them making it about men and why men don't go to church. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like a subtext. What they're really trying to say is like, what is this movement of online Christianity, especially led by philosophy and debate bros, and y'all don't even go to church? What's up with that? And actually, that's something I've been interested in talking about for years, because that's how I see it. Is there's just so many, that whole Jordan Peterson crowd. Yes, a lot of them are congregational Christians, but a lot of them are not. And I think that is important to what we're going through, because a lot of times people are saying things like, oh, we need to reach to the other side. We need to meet these people where we're at. Like, we need to be kinder to them. And your head, I think a lot of times you're still thinking the most popular, relevant form of Christianity is the lovey-dovey kind we see in the evangelical church, when actually the thought leaders now are these sort of toxic masculinity, terminally online Christians that have no interest in congregation building or church building. So yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of my take on a lot of this. Get out of the basement and go to church subtext. Exactly.
I missed somebody's comment. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, AR. Otangelo and the magical shroud.
Yeah, he's in the Shroud of Turin.
I edited something he said out. There's a guy, and I haven't seen this happen, but he suggested how the Shroud of Turin was made, and he actually did an experiment, and his experiment worked. So he actually did exactly what I suspected. So as many of us have heard, the Shroud of Turin, there's sort of a 3D effect to it. And I had wondered, like, the only way I know that this could have been done hundreds of years ago is with sunlight. I live in the desert. I'm very fascinated by how red fades here in the desert. Even my truck, which has spent the last 4 years in the desert, has faded some. It's an old truck with old paint, and it's faded more since it's been here in the desert. Even though it's
luckily you wanted patina.
Yes, luckily I wanted patina. So the guy, and I'm doing a poor job of explaining it, he basically, if you want to think of a metal framework that forms an image, and you place underneath it a cloth that's stained. Go ahead and use like blood from meat you get at the grocery store or whatever if you want to. Gross. And then place this underneath it, right? Place it underneath the metal frame and leave it out in the sun. And the sun will bleach the pattern into it'll bleach around the pattern, if you will. Because obviously wherever the lines in your pattern are, sunlight won't go through it. But as the sun moves across the sky, it goes around it and it helps to fade it. So when we get where we're going to Indiana, once I buy a home there, I think I'm going to try this and do like a daily progress report on it. It would be better if I did it here, but I just don't have the time because this is the freaking desert. We got the sun, baby. But Indiana with its humidity is just going to have to serve as the Middle East, or not the Middle East, as Turkey or wherever the heck.
Desert enough, yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be, Indiana's good enough. So I'm going to give it a shot, but it's exactly what I thought they would do. Only I was thinking like stained glass windows might do it. So almost exactly what I thought. But yeah, build a metal framework, and the image essentially is, and think about it, as the sun moves across the sky and it moves over a solid part of the image, that is less faded. And then the sun has to be over here for the light to reach underneath it. But ultimately, when you view it, it's darker than the surrounding areas. And I really think that's how they did the shroud. I also think they used probably, human blood, but we'll see. I mean, you could get it from a cow or a butcher. I need pig's blood. I need cow's blood. I just need blood. Can you give me
it's just
6 gallons of blood?
It's just it's just a scam. It's not even. It's
it
just
is
like,
a scam.
Yeah,
it's always been a scam. But look, we live in a time. Honestly, if I could reproduce what this guy did, which I should be able to, right? Scientific method. If I could reproduce what he did, there are people who could watch what I'm showing them and still not believe. And their chief reason for not believing is because I'm not a Christian. Or their chief reason for not believing is they still have faith in Jesus. You can believe in Jesus all you want. That doesn't mean the shroud belonged to him. It could be a first century artifact. It doesn't mean the shroud belonged to him.
Yeah, at some point we need to. I want to talk about it, but it deserves a whole episode, which is about how at this point, to me, religion is just refusing to accept that you're wrong. Like when you said like, oh, they want to hold on to their belief, like that's it. And I think we're in the era where that is now just inherently dishonest. That you can hang on to your belief, but you can't do so honestly or reasonably. But look, let's try to get through a few more minutes of this before we have to get out of here.
It does.
Right. That's the way God intended the church to be. The problem is we have a Western version of Christianity, which hijacked Christianity and has given us an American Christianity that is disconnected from Orthodox Christianity. And Orthodox Christianity, the New Testament, you should be able to come to my church, this church, and be able to find freedom to confess, find people who will love you, who will pray. And that as we did that together, you will find healing. Right. So maybe you just need to keep finding. Maybe you should still continue your church search until you find a place where you find the freedom to be authentic.
He just told them all the churches are bastardized.
Praise God for your small group, but I believe God has called us to communities, called us to biblical. None of those. The New Testament is clear. God has called us to biblical community, and I think you and Ryan should keep praying, asking God, if there's a church home in Atlanta where we can flourish and be authentic and be honest and be around brothers and confess sin, then send us there. You see them dudes right there?
Yeah.
The last time we was out on the road preaching somewhere, and y'all tell me if I'm lying. God is my witness.
And see, that's another thing too. Like, I have a very hard time believing that you can't find a church in Atlanta that has the type of small groups you're looking for, or a group of men you could pour yourself into. I think this is preemptive excuse making from people who aren't interested, because it's hard to not notice the trend towards small groups. Almost any church, especially evangelical church that's serious about growing, is probably going to have some sort of small group structure. It's at least very common. I'm not saying every church has them, but most churches have them. Especially if you're focused on growing, because people figured this out. People figured out a long time ago that how small groups help larger groups. And if you really want to grow a large group and you want people to stay connected, make sure they're part of a small group. That's why churches put so much emphasis on this. So again, to me, it's just like, internet Christians not really interested in being part of a congregational community. Oh, what excuse can I use? You just assume church now is the same way it was when you were growing up, and then go with an excuse from there. Yeah, didn't really feel like I had men in my life that like it's just like weird.
We got back from where we was, hopped in a car, right? 4 of us, and we driving home. What were we talking about in the car? We was talking about holiness. We was talking about lust. We was talking about the struggles that men have. We was confessing sin in that car and talking about the things we got to do to be more holy. Was we not having that conversation?
Man.
Right? Did not good come out of that conversation? Was anybody fronting in that conversation?
Man, that's so good, bro. If you can find people that's like-minded in the body of Christ.
Dude, that's the
really
point of a small group. Oh my goodness.
Like, this walk be feeling lonely, bro. Like, them diamonds in the rough right there. Like, you got friends like that. You got to cherish them, because them hard to find. Like, and why they in Atlanta and they don't go to his church? That's crazy.
There you go.
They in Atlanta, they ought to be in his church.
It's like right in front of them.
But that's
there you go,
man.
Conversation. Anybody being phony in that conversation, and we all ministers of the gospel, a part of a church. See, I'm trying to model that, to set the example from the top, that's the way we're supposed to live, to give everybody else, watch this word, permission at 2019 to live that way. And I say at 2019, that's a place it's okay to not be okay. And I try to encourage my people, don't condemn and judge other people.
Are we going that far back? Is this from 5 years ago? My goodness.
Let's pray. Let's find healing together. That's the way I want my church family to get down.
Man, I love that.
Yeah, me too.
We should. That's what Jesus wanted for us. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what he wanted for us. I feel like it's unfortunate that the church is no longer a safe place, because now it's a fake place. Mm-hmm. It's a Western place, but it's not a biblical place.
I want to look at the data. I feel like so much of what we're seeing in this moment right now, I wouldn't be surprised if more men were starting to go to church, just as a result of, the changes to the landscape. But I don't know. I don't know the data. I don't know the data. All right, let's get out of here.
Okay.
I don't think they're gonna tell the truth anyway. y'all men ain't going to church because they ain't, I don't know, they ain't got the right woman in their life to lead them there, I guess.
Well, look, another thing, we didn't touch on this, the competition. You have sporting events taking place at church time. You have the fact that there's the internet and you can play video games with people all across the world. It's just Jesus has a lot of competition. He does. And I'm not a gamer, right? But many of you may be able to testify to this. Is your gaming community more fun than church?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And not only that, like I will 100% tell people in my gaming community what I'm going through in life before, you know, really before mostly anybody, and certainly more so than I would have even at the height of my church participation, because there isn't all that extra stuff that comes with it, right? Like growing up, I was always heavily integrated into a church. But if I'm having issues, I'm going to go to people in my school who are my friends who are just going to help me out rather than confess it in a religious context, because that always came with so much extra shame and hurt and all this other stuff. But the people that I'm with and gather all the time, I would go to even before the club, right? Mostly stuff wouldn't even make it to the club because, you know, my immediate needs for support and friendship are typically met by people in this community. And again, it's nothing to do with religion. It's just they're in my life every day, and that's one of the consequences. So that's what sucks about all this. Is one of the things that sucks about religion overall is that people lose interest in real life. Reality feels mundane. It feels like it's not special enough. It feels like it's not magical enough. And so you overlook the beauty of just having friends. Like I said during my last stream, like I came home the other day and I went and chilled in my room for like a couple hours. But when I came home, like from work, there was all this noise playing, you know, and it's almost like when you come home to your partner or your kids, right? And they're watching TV or they're playing a video game or something. You walk into a noisy environment, right? I was like, what's going on? And I came over here and it was just Lena was in Gather playing a video or whatever. But in that moment, it was like, I was like, oh, this is so cool, because I felt, even though I didn't jump in Gather at the time, like I went and did my own thing for a little while before I came in Gather. I just felt like I came home to the presence of having friends and people in my life. And even though they're not, literally Lena lives in California, it's literally on the opposite side of the whole country. I could feel it felt like the presence, right? I felt the presence of friendship in my life, and not feeling alone, just walking into a situation where someone you know and love is here and doing their own thing and available to socialize, right? So in that moment, I appreciated it, even though it wasn't magical or God-given or miraculous. It's just regular old people watching YouTube videos. You know, it meant something to me. It meant something to me. And that's part of rebuilding your life after, you know, a major change like that is finding that hope, meaning, and purpose. I hate to sound cliche, right? But in things that are real, even stuff like, you know, like I said, like evolution. Like I try not to romanticize nature, y'all, because I think that's a mistake. Like that might sound weird that I'm a biologist, but I'm not a nature lover, because I think it's important to stay neutral, right? For me to say nature is good or bad, beautiful or horrific, you know, you've got to understand that it's both, and on balance, probably neither. But that's just me, right? But I do, for instance, like Darwin would say, there's grandeur in this view of life. I do understand. We could look at the tree of life, understand that we all do have a common ancestry, literally going all the way back to the very first life form. like, wow, that's crazy. Like I can appreciate that. Like I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, you know, that story of we all were created from the same source, right? Like that's amazing. We have a real story that you can prove happened. And that's the reality of that story. Yet to so many people, telling them that they were not magically created by a supernatural being feels like a demotion, and they're not interested. They literally resist the story, the true story, because it just doesn't, it makes them feel less special. And again, that is a tragedy to me. It's understandable when you've been taught your whole life that the creator of the universe is like you and created the universe for you and has orchestrated the universe such that you are deserving of eternal life, and they're going to grant that to you for following them. Yeah, I get that you don't want to hear that it's all just a result of natural processes. But damn, I wish you did. I really wish you did, because it's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, I find it amazing when I would look at DNA. I don't have your level of knowledge about it. Far from it. But when I was studying it, I thought this is really impressive. And in my senior high school biology lab, one of the things we did was look at human blood under a microscope, and I volunteered. So my teacher pricked my finger and I squeezed blood onto the various slides that were going to be used, you know, drop of salt water, drop of my blood. And it was fascinating. The number of people turning their heads to look at me. I'm no different than they are, really. Turning their heads to look at me, and we're watching this blood move around under this microscope. And that was, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, it's alive.
Yeah,
like, this is super impressive to see. What we couldn't see is the genetic code built into that enabled my daughter to have feet like mine, thighs like mine, a face like mine, hair like I had when I was a little baby that I hope turns into hair like her mother and not hair like I have.
Yeah.
But all those instructions are there, and some of them are ancient.
Yeah. And isn't that crazy? You get with somebody and your baby literally becomes a mix of the two of you.
It's astonishing to see.
Yeah.
By the way, she has so many of my habits. There's and I want to say for future parents and current parents, you probably noticed like there's a back and forth there. I've noticed like, wait, I wasn't doing that before she was born. So I got that from her. You know, I think there develops in unspoken form of communication between uncles and their nieces and nephews, aunts and their nieces and nephews, parents and their children. I think there are unspoken things that go back and forth because you do understand some things, even though you don't have a common language, if you will.
Right.
But it's astonishing to see. And thank you, Carrie Ann. It's a little hard to manage. My little curls here can be hard to manage. But my daughter has big curls, which is kind of what I was hoping for, figuring it's easier for her to brush. But yeah, it's fascinating, and to discredit the randomness in favor of saying that an all-powerful God made the first human being out of the dust of the ground, which to me is purely an allegory, right? There's a parable there.
Right.
These were desert people. That's how Adam was made, from the dust of the ground. They were desert people, living people already. So,
for sure.
you know.
For sure.
Cain went and dwelt in the land of Nod, did he? Who is Nod? Why were there people there already? Come on, guys.
Yeah, and my whole thing was, again, just boring, soft, silly. I think for a lot of these guys, especially these intellectual Christian types, and a lot of them with this sort of throw a little toxic masculinity in there. Church is boring. Church is soft, right? Because again, you got to remember, now we live in an era where so many Christians are hearing the gospel and going up to their pastor, and this tells you, right? This tells you that their background was not in church. Think about this: grown adults go up to pastors and say, "Where did you get that woke liberal nonsense from?" Right? You can't have grown up in the church and say that, right? Because if you grew up in the church, you've heard this message before.
You've heard it before.
And you've been hearing for decades about Jesus loves everybody and God is love and da 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 da.
I'm gonna
So this is news to you in your 40s. You probably ain't been around.
I'm gonna disagree with you.
Oh, okay.
I literally I was late last night and this morning too, writing to Christians in response to a meme that this bigot put up, right? And there's a guy who's a Christian who I disagree with on occasion about some things, but we both dislike this bigot's nonsense, so we respond to it. And the bigot criticized his Christian response because the Pope criticized Trump for the way he treated immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
The Christian puts in a quote from Luke. The bigot criticizes him for it. And then here comes me on my white horse, my white atheist horse. And I give multiple scriptures about this. And I say, Trump says he's a Christian. The Pope is also a Christian. The Pope is doing what he should do. He is gently rebuking Trump for wrongly treating the strangers in his land. Here's what the Bible has to say. I'm giving you 3 examples. They're not the only 3. So I'm coming to you. 1, 2, 3. Here are 3 examples. What has happened is fully 2/3 of Christians, if not more, have never read the Bible. And as they're young, when you come into the church, you're not really participating in the political world. You don't have an opinion. Nobody has molded your mind to believe this or that. You kind of just figure things out for yourself. But once you listen to enough Rush Limbaugh or Steve Bannon or Larry Elder or Dennis Prager or whoever, they start to help you form an opinion in your mind, whether you agree with what they're saying or disagree with what they're saying. Well, the flavor of the month is now MAGA. And MAGA is against this illegal immigration. Many MAGA people say they are Christian. The Bible, the illegal immigrants in the Bible were the Hebrews when they invaded Canaan.
Mm.
They were the illegal immigrants. They didn't illegally go to Egypt. Abraham didn't illegally go to Egypt. We see these other people when they go on their sojourns, they don't illegally go there. When Jesus's family fled to Egypt, I don't think they went to Egypt, but they went somewhere. They weren't illegals there. They just left. Jesus says, hey, you gotta. In Matthew 25, he tells you got to take care of these people.
So I think you should.
Deuteronomy, take care of the stranger.
I think you should watch Durante's video. Durante Lamar came out with a video. It's like 10 things. I don't know. It's like 10 things Jesus said that prove he's a cult leader. Well, we talked about that in our last one.
About it.
Right.
It's freaking amazing.
So
I had so much fun with that.
So part of that is I think what's happened is I do think Jesus was an asshole, and I think the Old Testament God is ruthless and a jerk, and I think Jesus is an asshole, quite frankly, and a jerk and a cult leader. Very clear. But I think what happened is, at least over my lifetime, the all-loving God lie was packaged with the gospel of prosperity. I think they needed each other. Mm-hmm. Right, because they needed a God who wants to bless you and wants to reward you and wants you to have everything and wants to solve all your problems. And And so I think a lot of people never realized that the sort of bad Christians were actually operating on just as firm or even a more firm foundation than they are. And now I think we're in an era where everybody knows it, but it's become unacceptable socially to challenge it. In other words, for me, to be honest with you, this is why Christians don't address problems in the church. It's because at some level they know that if you were really basing things in the church on what's really in the Bible, these things are acceptable to them. And it's acceptable to hate gay people because of what it says in the Bible. It's acceptable. I'm gonna go there, y'all. It's acceptable to sleep with underage girls because it's acceptable in the Bible. It's acceptable to be racist and have slavery because it's acceptable in the Bible. It's acceptable to tolerate genocide because it's acceptable in the Bible. And they know this. And now the real thing is on us, on the other side, because we're the ones who are, to me, acting in denial of this. We're the ones who are pretending that, oh, this is going to be deep. We're the ones pretending that they don't know what they know, right? This gets you into the whole, well, I know that you know that I know that you know that you know that I know, right? But no, seriously, we pretend like the soft Christians, the nice Christians, we pretend that they don't understand what the Bible really says, right? We're all saying they don't read it, they don't get it, they don't know, right? But most of them, if you actually ask them, they'll say they have read the Bible. And you certainly, if you bring up like certain passages, yeah, but what they mean is that some of it exactly, and they think it also means enough of it, right?
I read the book of Joel.
Yeah, and I would say it is. And I would say it kind of is enough of it in the sense that when it comes to these key issues, they know what it says. They know there's slavery in the Bible. They know about the story where God asked a father to kill his son to prove his loyalty. They know about Genesis. They know about hell. They know about the woman in adultery. Right. So they know what it says about homosexuals. They all know that. Right. Don't please, if they haven't read any of the Bible, they know that. Right. So it gets to a point, and again, I say this seriously, it gets to the point where we're doing this person's in the KKK, and it's not necessarily that they hate black people. It's just that this is a source of pride of their European heritage, and they get a sense of community out of going to the cookouts and eating hot dogs. It's like at some point we have to just say no. You guys actually have been on the wrong side of history. You're still on the wrong side of history. You know you're on the wrong side of history. And worst of all, you're refusing to be honest about it. And the problem I'm seeing, and this is a bit of a tangent, it's really the people on our side who are woke scolding, who are basically saying, hey, we have to be nicer to these people. We have to meet them where we're at. We have to build a bridge to the other side, because to me it lacks critical thinking about the fact that these people are not interested in listening. They're not interested in learning. They're not interested in changing. And so you are sending the rest of us on a fool's errand and ignoring the history that these people have always knowingly and willingly disregarded the humanity of others. And you cannot say this to me in 2025 unless you live under a rock, because you saw them intentionally botch the pandemic. You saw them intentionally orchestrate an insurrection. You've seen them intentionally grant a felon immunity and then make him president. Like all of the things that you continue, you're watching them lead an actual mass deportation operation, literally rolling up to people dressed in all black with masks, snatching college students off the streets. You're watching it happen. You're watching them criminalize the smallest, most marginalized LGBTQ people on the planet. You are watching them do it. And then the people on our side, the people who are supposed to be standing up for the humanity of others, are going, you need to be nicer to those people. You need to speak to their values. You need to be kinder to your oppressor. And also
that's biblical too.
And see, that's why you can't do it. The left is literally saying love your enemy. No, dummy. Love your enemy just allows your enemy to kill you. It's easier to kill you from 6 inches than 60 feet. If you can love your enemy, they're not really an enemy.
It doesn't matter because Jesus is coming back. That's what they're told.
Seriously. And again, that's what we have to realize. They have signed a death pact. They've signed a death pact with Christianity. When are we going to believe them? When are we going to take it seriously? When are we going to say, oh, no, they're really that committed to this? The other mistake it means is it shifts our focus from the collective to the individual. The problems we face as a result of religious oppression are collective. It's the way it affects our institutions. It's the way it affects our laws. It's the way it affects our economy, right? It's the way it affects our lives. Shifting the focus to changing the minds of particular individuals will never solve the problem, because the thoughts of individuals is not really the problem to begin with. I understand it's a huge part of it. Populations are collections of individuals after all, but this is always a critical analysis, because again, like as a black person, for instance, I need the institutions to change, and you have to address the institutional change in order to make it happen expediently. If it's about convincing your uncle to be less racist, we're never going to get to where we're going. And the final thing I'll say is, this is why people don't challenge the people in their own lives. This one's going to sting, but most people won't have this conversation with their aunts, their grandparents, their parents, their siblings, because at some level you already know how committed to this they are. And that's a problem, because the argument people keep saying ostensibly is there's all these super reasonable Christians out there. They're actually really loving people. Matter of fact, they're people we know and love. They're super, super reasonable. And so what you need to do is you need to reach out to the aisle with them. You need to meet them where they're at. You need to extend the olive branch. You need to be understanding. You just need to have conversations with them. Again, if you can't do it yourself with your own relatives, your own friends, in your own family, you're confessing in our inability to do that those people are probably, there's not a whole lot of them. I'm not saying nobody's that way. There are billions of people on the planet. There's always an exception. But we're confessing that it's an unreasonable expectation, because we've already decided that it's not even worth trying with most of our friends and family. So then how could it be that the people who have actual enmity towards us, the ones who are actually actively oppressing us, how could we sit here and pretend that they're just a polite conversation away from changing, when the people who claim to actually love us and have raised us won't do it? At some point, y'all, we need a reality check. All right, sorry, that was a crazy long end to show rant. My one black friend, do you have anything else before we get out of here?
And each other.
Yeah, be good to yourselves, gang.
And each other.
All right, we love y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Said I'm gone.